And we're live. Welcome to the First Layer Ask for Help. This is your weekly live stream where Brian... Nope, the other way. Nope, that way.
No, you haven't even put me up yet. That's just solo you
that's
still.
Just me. Brian's here
I'm
with
here.
me, believe me. Yeah, let me cut to that. Yeah, there we go.
Who would have guessed? Hey,
yeah, there
guys.
He is. There he is over there.
I think I can safely say hi, guys, because 100% of our viewers are males, according to YouTube.
Well, no, we have a 3.6% female. We have a 3.6% female audience.
Okay.
All right. So let's say hello to a few people here tonight. We have Joseph Jolly from Orlando, Florida. He says, awesome, successful rocket launches. Yes, they were. Thank you very much. Robert, 954. Hello from soggy Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Dominic Versettos, all the way from Chicago. We got TK's 3D Prints from North Wales. Trevor Rickards, just here. Hello. John Peters, we've got from Roysford, PA. Rex Waldy. Mike Hunt, all the way from Perth, Wales. Or
wow,
no, that's not Wales. That's
Washington.
No, it's Australia.
Is it? Oh, there we go. Australian, yeah. Western Australia. There we go.
Western Australia. There we go. Southern California, Robert Marvin. Hello. We've got Millen Wallace. David Self from Minnesota. Peter Sandy. Oh, Mike Kirk Jr. from Barrie, Ontario. Hey, there's another Canadian here. Patrick Rudy and Hobby Howie from Indiana.
And as you can hear, we have side commentary hidden behind my mic stand.
Yeah, there you go. There's the lovely Jess Corniching. Yeah.
I'm self-conscious about sitting like a shrimp.
It's going to be one of those nights. Now, as you can see, I've got a little bit of a studio upgrade over here, actually, behind me. I just set this up today, so printers aren't even powered up yet.
He stole my idea.
I came to your house, and I was inspired by your idea, and I cloned it in every way possible. Except I bought a $60 piece of sanded wood for my shelf.
I bought a $20 piece of wood and had them cut it.
Well, I had them cut it too. It was a really nice piece of wood. I don't want to say I spent my Saturday stroking wood at Home Depot, but I stroked wood at Home Depot.
All right, okay.
Hey,
there's
Jess
Dan
is right.
Adams.
It does smell very nice in here.
Oh, there you go. Dan Adams, Gary McKinnon, Aura Noodle, and I know who Aura Noodle is. She's sitting there in the background. All right. I need help. My government is actively lying about COVID, even in the face of their own statistics. Gary McKinnon.
You know what? Seems every government's doing that now.
You're on the wrong show, Gary, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, but stay safe, everybody. That's my weekly commentary.
There you go. All right.
Max here.
Yeah. And I think we got everybody so far. So, first and foremost, let me first say welcome, everybody. Secondly, for those of you that are part of our Facebook group, you'll notice I had to put up a little write-up today. My time is getting very stretched, very thinly, and I'm stressing out because of it. Mm-hmm. It is not a shot to anybody that posting, but it is kind of an awareness. Help us to keep us on track. We've been trying to get you guys content, and we do really appreciate you guys coming out, asking your questions and that sort of thing. And this is what I do for a living. I run our channel, I run our websites, all of the product, and trying to build things for future episodes and for other streams of revenue. That's kind of falls all on me. Brian helps me out with doing different projects from time to time, and I do really appreciate it. Brian is my partner on this channel, and we're 50-50, but because he has a day job, I'm kind of doing the lion's share of work. So
yeah,
if you guys
and
have
my day
questions,
job eats up all my time. So
yeah,
forgiveness if you try and send me an email or something, but I have very limited time. Even tonight, I am technically on call, but fingers crossed, I haven't had any phone calls this week. So let's hope we can make it through. Or maybe if you're lucky and I do get a call, we might have the lovely lady Jess step in.
Yeah,
who's
maybe
sticking her tongue out at me in shock.
So for anybody that is sending us in questions, and we do have questions, please send them to questions@thefirstlayer.com. I'll be putting up that in the that screen up in just a little bit. That being said, I wanted to kind of get that out of the way, and thank you guys all for being here with us tonight. We've got 41 of you concurrently watching right now, or 45 watching right now. You're right, though. Those likes need to go up. We've only got 8 likes. 47 people here and only 8 likes. Come on, you guys. Hit that like button. All right.
We appreciate it. If you're not going to hit the like, at least hit a super chat.
Yeah. Super chat is turned on. So if you've got questions tonight and you want to get them to the front of the line, use the super chat. It's a great way. It helps us out. It helps to keep the lights on. It helps us to keep bringing you guys content. So,
maybe I'll just keep fading this light behind me there until someone sends me a coffee.
Yeah, there you go. Kieran Clark is here this evening. We also have Peter Reynolds, my good friend Peter. Who else did I miss? Brad Pond, Mark Thibodeau, Hobby Howie's here. Paul Cumber's here. And we
got a whole bunch of fun people.
Think I've got everybody. All right, there we go.
Thank you, and thank you everybody for tolerating our up and down week. I'll put it that way. So
yeah,
we first had our schedule offset that we had to deal with because Saturdays were an absolute scheduling nightmare for the last 3 weeks, and then we had some major weather fluctuations that was even impacting myself, who I don't normally get migraines, but unfortunately we had to make some last minute decisions to cancel the episodes, and unfortunately we tried our best to communicate that. But I think we could have done a little better. So we're going to go and give you guys that as much advance notice as we can if we're shifting or canceling a show. So apologies for last week, and we'll just start rocking it from here on out. So
I want to address this one question, right? Well, it's not really a question. It's more of a comment from Hobby Howie. He says, there's something wrong with Cura 4.7.1. It is a little buggy. I agree. I tried to install it on my machine down here. And this machine here, which I do a lot of tutorials on, and the first version the one that was immediately out, was having all kinds of issues trying to install. Now it has been fixed, and I just downloaded it today again for the computer that is up in the printer room, and it is working flawlessly. So just be aware of that, guys. So it is fixed to what I think. And we have one of these. Hang on.
Super chat.
Hey, from Mike Kirk Jr., $10. Thank you very much, Mike. We do appreciate that.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to show you guys a little trick with Cura real quick here, because this is something I actually did today. So I'm just going to jump over, and here's the main Cura website for downloading it, okay? Now, by default, it gives us the new version to download and says download for free. Go to Find Previous Versions, and this will take you to Cura's GitHub page. And as you can see, it shows each release of Cura, when it was released, what its code was. But what we care about is to click on 4.7.1 in this case. And if we take a look, here is the change list of the application. So, it has new features. They have a video that they put out, usually for the major versions and all that. But if you take a look, 4.7.1 was simply a bug fix. All it did was fix a crash when duplicating a built-in profile. Having an equal symbol in your start or end G-code would cause part of that G-code to disappear and could cause a crash when loading a model. This is fixed now. The Mac OS build is now notarized by Apple to prevent a security warning from popping up when starting Cura for the first time, and corrected the orientation of the build plate mesh for TiVo Tarantula Pro. The reason I wanted to go through these really quick and why you want to review these change notes before you download versions is if you are having an issue, there's really no reason to keep with this version. You can roll back to Cura version 4.7 if it works great for you, for instance, because the change list here is just some bug fixes, and the only one that I think would be practical for most users would be the TiVo Tarantula Pro one. But for the rest of it, I read these through, and they were bug fixes that didn't impact my experience. So to prevent myself from introducing a new bug to my Cura and to my printer I was diagnosing, I just chose to stick on 4.7. So make sure to click on that Find Previous Versions and review the release notes for each version of Cura before you upgrade and know what's coming along, because you may inadvertently break something that was working for yourself.
And there you go. Loch Ness is here. Hello, Loch Ness. Welcome. I just want to say that Dominic Versetto says that Amazon has a $13 reptile heater pad that can achieve 80C. Can I use it to turn my dry box design into a filament dryer? Yes and no. You are still going to need desiccant in that filament dryer. So what I would do is, if you want to do that, I would go ahead and do it. Put that in there, but also put some desiccant in there as well, so that it's going to help to absorb any moisture that is in there. Speaking of dryers, we have one coming up in the next few weeks. We got one into the studio and we're playing with it now, and I just dried some Pet G, and it went from 37% humidity down to 12% humidity. So I believe, and it takes 2 rolls, not one. So it'll take one big 2 kilogram roll, or it'll take 2 1 kilogram rolls, or smaller. And we're going to be showing you the guys that in a few weeks' time. I'm not going to tell you who it's from, because they're going to be doing a big Kickstarter for it. And this thing's really cool. So let's get on to the first question. This one is from Wesley Burden. And he says, hello, First Layer. I hope you're all well. I'm reaching out to you all for some very needed assistance. About 2 weeks ago, I purchased and received my first printer, assembled, leveled, and proceeded to print the entire first roll of filament and even some of the new filament. This past weekend, however, it started printing too high off of the print bed. I thought it was a simple re-level, so I proceeded with every step the same I did out of the box, to no avail. I am still yet to get it printing properly. When I set the Z-axis then to go to level, the cold level goes fine and the heated level is off. When I adjust for heat, it prints off the bed completely. I am trying not to pull my hair out. I really hope y'all can help me, and if there is someone I can video chat with and show what I'm meaning, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for all your help and time. I sincerely hope to hear from you soon. I tell you probably what's going on is that in the firmware it is set to 0. So it is not going past 0. So even though you're getting that bed and you're doing the re-leveling and you've got that little bit of tension on the paper, if it's set to 0, it has its own predetermined idea of how far that should be away from the actual bed. So if that is not set correctly, your Z offset will never work, period. And if you're not saving that Z offset into the firmware, and you can do that on most printers right through the LCD, just by saving the changes that you've made on the LCD. So that also will help you a lot as well. So try that. If that doesn't work, then contact us again and we'll set up something for one of us to talk to you and guide you through it.
You know, go ahead and post it to our Facebook group, because we also have a great community of people who have all gone through this issue. Now, in specifics regarding your bed changing its shape when it's heated, that is a very well-known issue, and there are many different solutions for that. Usually our recommendation is to replace whatever bed it came with and get yourself a sheet of mirror glass, because mirror glass is considered to be the flattest glass you can get at a cheap scale, if you will. Did he say which printer he got, by the way?
He did not.
Okay.
Did not.
If it's something the size of, say, a CR-10, 300 mil by 300 mil, or 12 inch by 12 inch for our American fans, they places like Lowe's carry mirror tiles that are already cut in that size. If you go any other size, you may need to cut it yourself, or go to a glass shop, or even to some of the hardware stores themselves to have them cut that mirror to size. And generally, any of that bowing, it'll kind of pad it out and cover it up a little bit. If you really can't overcome it, we always recommend going and getting an ABL solution such as the BL Touch, which will tell the firmware where your lumps are in the bed and will actually move your Z up and down to compensate for that. And you can even fade it out over time so that it does become flat by your top layer.
There you go. Trevor Rickard, he says, got a quick question for y'all. I love these guys that say y'all. I think that's awesome, because it allows me to say y'all. Y'all.
and then our Texas viewership just drops off
Yeah,
20%.
exactly. He says, tonight I'm wondering why my Big Tree Tech TFT35 version 3.0 is not working on the latest version of Marlin 2.0, and the second I take it down to the lower version, it works. That's because inside where it is talking about screens, it hasn't been changed, I don't think. That would be my first place I would look. What do you say, Brian?
Yeah, Trevor Rickard, are you running it in the emulator mode for the TFT emulation, or are you running it for the full-on GUI mode? Regardless, there might be an issue with Marlin with your motherboard specifically, but there's also a lot of little weird bugs with STM32 boards, notably in Marlin with their software serial libraries. So, assuming you haven't changed your serial configuration between the two versions, it may be worthwhile to go to Marlin's GitHub and just search it up, because there are little bug fixes that may not be in the latest stable version yet, but are in the bug fix version. And the only reason I say that is because I've gone through a couple of their threads sometimes, and the level of detail that these guys are going into with their detail on even motion vectors and all that, it's sometimes way over my head. So sometimes it's easy to find that thread, fly to the bottom and see what the latest comments are, and then work your way back up and see if it's just a simple code change.
Patrick Reedy. Hey, this is maybe a dumb question, but I couldn't find it online. I was wondering what fan I could use to replace the fan on the hot end of my CR-10 V2, and fan is on the left side of the hot end. I know exactly which one you're talking about. That is a 40-40-10 fan, and you can replace that with a ball bearing fan. You are going to have to change out the connector, but it is a ball bearing fan, and it's a 40-40-10. If you go with a ball bearing, it's going to be a little bit quieter than a sleeve bearing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, yeah, I see it now. Now, there's no cover on that side, is there not?
There is and there isn't. You have to take off the full cover first to be able to get at all of those fans on the interior. It's the same thing they did on the V2 for the Ender 3. All the fans are now in that cover, and you have to pull that entire cover off, and it's 3 bolts that are in the back, not on the front anymore like it was before. So it's a little bit of a pain in the butt to get to, but yeah.
Now, if you pull that cover off, everything I can see from it here, you could get away with a 40-40-20 if you have longer screws and you keep that cover off. But yes, 40-40-10, and make sure, I believe that the CR-10 V2 is 24 volts, is it not?
Yes, make sure you get a 24 volt fan. Don't get a 12 volt till you'll burn it up.
Now, if you're comfortable with cutting the wires and making the connector yourself, the best place you can go for fans is DigiKey.
Yeah.
You're just going to have to know what you're looking for, and you type in ball bearing fan and you set all your filters, and then it gives you a plethora of lists. Now, I know everybody loves the Noctua fans, that my entire PC is Noctua, but what you have to understand is with the silent mode of it comes a lower airflow, and that can actually increase clogging for some people. So the safest bet is to order a good brand like Sunon. I can't think of any others on the top of my head. I always order Sunons, and sure, they'll be louder than a Noctua, but they are so reliable, it's the best fan you could buy.
Here's a great one from James Lane. He says, Ender 3 BL Touch, solid bed mounts, bed not well trimmed even after G29 WTF. And then he goes on to say, Z offset is calibrated, but corners still differ from each other even after G29. And that is because you are using the standard bed leveling, which is ABL, auto bed leveling, which it's good. It pinpoints all the locations, but it doesn't create a solid enough mesh. What you would like to be using, and hopefully you can with the machine that you have, is you want to use unified bed leveling. And unified bed leveling does 2 things. It's the best of mesh bed leveling and auto bed leveling. So what it does is it creates that mesh and holds onto it during the duration of the print. And you'll find that, yes, your corners may be down a bit, but it will compensate for that, and you'll see just a very slight rise and fall in the Z-axis as it traverses the high and low spots. So check that
Yeah,
out
and
in your firmware. Yeah.
And if you scale it, it's crazy. I'm using UBL actually as we speak downstairs on my CR-10S V, and I've managed to squeeze it, even with solid bed mounts and everything. I've got it down to about 0.5 millimeter difference across the bed. And just the way it builds the mesh, it's very detailed, and it allows you to modify that mesh if it didn't probe properly. Now, if you're having tons of issues with ABLs, the first thing I recommend doing in Marlin is enable the M48 probe repeatability test.
Yeah.
And what this does is it picks a specific point on the bed. It used to be the home position, but now it seems to be wherever your X and Y is. And it actually does 10 probes up and down at the same point and tells you the deviation in millimeters of between your highest and your lowest probe point. Now, if you're seeing anything above 0.005, you're never going to level that bed properly, even with an ABL. Mine, actually, I've got it down to 0.001, which is almost the resolution of a 1/28th of a microstep. So I know for sure when I'm laying down my layers, now it's actually printing at the proper height. A lot of times when I had issues, I saw it as high as 0.02, 0.03, and then even if you have a rough idea of where your bed is, bear in mind that your first layer is only 0.02 or 0.2 millimeters sometimes, and that could be the difference between binding to the bed or scraping across the glass.
Yeah.
Yeah, James Lane saying M48 is showing a deviation of 0.043. That's huge. That's almost an entire step of your motor. So what I would say to do, first option is slow down your probe points. Second of all, look into the options. In my case, I enable software mode on my BL Touch, and I give a probe delay of 500 milliseconds. And I'm only doing a single point probe. Now, if you are still having bigger issues than that, and you can tell me which board you have, but if it's a stock Creality board, if you ever go to the BL Touch's website, they recommend desoldering the capacitor on there for the end stop, as that actually buffers out and distorts the precision of the pinpoint. So take a look into that. I'll see if I can pull up the link and I'll post it in the chat to take a look at. But yeah,
All right.
0.04 is way too high.
Robert 954 says big tree updates are up, so that's good if you've got a big tree board. That might be the way to go. And you've got James Lane says he has the SKR E3 dip version 1.0 board.
Okay, yeah, I didn't have any issues with that board. James, helping somebody else. James, the other thing is, are you using the Z end stop, or are you using the pin that was supposed to be allocated for the BL Touch? I've changed mine to Z end stop, and I had no problems, but I've heard a lot of people having issues with the other pins.
Okie doke. Well, let's get on to the next question here. This is probably one for me. What's a good paint for PLA? Acrylic. Acrylic paint's a perfect paint for PLA. If you're going to prime it, you can use any of the Rust-Oleum primers, acrylic primers. Those are the ones I use. And then I just use any acrylic paint. A lot of times I use the Liquitex basic paints, and I mix up my own colors because I know a little bit about color theory. And away you go. So that's something to keep in mind if you are going to be using or painting your projects. Speaking of projects, we got one here that I just did for our rockets. You can see one of them is in the background on a stand, and this one's going to Brian because he's got one of the rockets at his place.
Yes, I do. Obviously, as you can tell, I don't have a lot of room, but we will make it fit
have a
in there.
rocket.
I do.
All right.
I have a very big rocket.
I don't want to know.
That's my one for the night.
This is a family show. All right, so let's get on to the next question that came in this week. Actually, it's more of a comment than a question. It's from Mark Martin. He says, I have an update to my issue with the BL Touch on my CR-10 V2. I went through and tried everything I thought would help and saw mentioned in posts and in videos, but nothing worked. He says, I finally downloaded the Tiny Machines firmware.hex file for the V2 and the BL Touch, uploaded that, and it's working great. I am not sure what I was missing in the standard Marlin, but putting the Tiny Machines firmware on there is working great, so that is what I'm going to go with for now.
That's great.
Yes, that is
now,
awesome.
Just a little history for you guys on firmware, basically. Anything for a profile for Marlin is usually contributed by either the manufacturer or somebody in the community that built it and proved it worked. Now, unless there's reasons to change it, usually that's just carried forward, so it's the same parameters with a new version. But there are sometimes features that do have to be tweaked a little bit there. So in the case of the CR-10 V2, Tiny Machines, especially on Creality, has been great, keeping up to date. And really, if you have a Creality machine, it's not a bad starting point. Just
true.
the same as TH3D firmware is just a good starting point to go with. Myself, I dive into vanilla Marlin because I'm always playing with the latest features. But if you just need your machine to print, go with something proven. You know, work your way around. So I've heard of like several. I think it's Cheetah firmware is another one. I haven't personally tried it, but I've heard great things about it. But you know, since I'm teaching you everybody Marlin half the time, and since most of the information is based off some form of vanilla Marlin or some modification to that, that's what I stick with. But if you want to experiment with them, I don't see anything wrong with these other firmwares.
There you go. All right, Patrick Reedy says, I was also wondering what a good direct drive and hot end would be good for the CR10 V2 and the CR10S Pro V2. My first question to you would be, why do you want to go direct drive? My answer to your question would be, most people are going with the Chimera right now, the direct drive Chimera. I have not used the Chimera. I don't have a Chimera here. I've reached out to E3D to send me one. They have not. They haven't even responded to my email. So, which is not unusual. Most people don't respond to my emails. Chimera would be the way that a lot of people are going. There's a lot of great video information out there, and there's a lot of great forums already built on the Chimera. So check those out before making the move to direct drive. I've got one printer that just came in this week. That is a direct drive machine, and I really don't use direct drive very often, to be perfectly honest with you. Most of what I'm doing, including even running TPU, I'm using through a Bowden setup, and I'm using the right extruder for that setup. The hot ends are all working fine.
Now, when it comes to direct drive, I actually do have quite a bit of experience of modifying printers to direct drive, and basically here is my summary of things that you need to know with direct drive. Number one, you're adding a lot of weight to your X gantry.
Yep.
Now, why is that important? Because if you start 3D printing mounts, PLA is actually quite rubbery when it comes to high motion. And so if you are putting anything onto that hot end with that extra motor weight and wiggling around, it's going to actually create artifacts in your print. It may work fine, but it will create artifacts. No amount of acceleration or speed changes will make that better. You just need it to be solid. So you have to print it in something like ABS or PETG, or in my case, actually get milled aluminum sheets to hold it in place. Now, the second feedback is that the wheels themselves also will have some wiggle to them because of that added weight. So if you don't have a linear rail on your X-axis, it may not be that great. My only machine at this point that I have that's direct drive, that's 3D printed, is my Ender 3, because the gantry is small enough that it doesn't have nearly as much wiggle as my CR-10S V2. Now, there are all sorts of products out there on the market for them, but what you got to remember too is you're going to lose vertical build volume. So, for instance, an Ender 3, if you put a direct drive on there, you're going to lose almost 50 millimeters of vertical print height. Now, if that being said, if all those sacrifices are worth it for your flexible materials, or in my case, because it never clogs, then go ahead and give it a go. But there are a lot of caveats that you may want to consider before you make that dive over. You know, even wire lengths. A lot of the mod kits I've seen, they don't come with wire extensions for your steppers and for your heat cartridge and your thermistor, and then you start splicing wires and it just becomes a huge mess. I actually had a thermal runaway the other day because of one bad solder joint. So it is quite a big conversion, and you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? So as Richard said, TPU can be printed with Bowden, and I can attest to that. My CR-10S behind me here has a Volcano-like hot end on it, but it's still Bowden tube fed. Now, if you want to print TPU, I think you're going to actually have better results buying a better Bowden tube where it's a tighter inner diameter, because that's what we're overcoming. And speaking about Bowden setups, I was going to lead into this question that popped up here from Adam DeMella. Said, I enabled / calibrated linear advance on my Ender 3 Pro with Bowden, and results were terrible. Tons of zits. Is linear advance mostly for direct drive? It's actually the exact opposite. linear advance is 100% for Bowden setups and not for direct drive. And I know this because I had to switch off linear advance on all my 0.02 factor. It was extruding efficiently without, and it started having little holes at the end because the extrusion was so tight on the direct drive setup. So if it's all right, Richard, I'll give a quick breakdown of what linear advance actually does. Basically, linear advance is a means of trying to compensate for pressure buildup in the nozzle. So what they do is the K factor determines how much filament it should pressure into the line up front when drawing a line, and then how much to back off at the end of the line. Now, in a perfect world with perfect physics, what would happen is all your filament would come out of the hot end at the same rate. It wouldn't have any pressure buildup, and then when you stop at the end of the line, your filament will just stop in the nozzle and not dribble out. But in actuality, what happens with a Bowden setup, because of the room that the filament has to move around inside that Bowden tube, it can flex a little bit, it can bend, it can compress, and can do all sorts of other weird things. So the point of linear advance is to try and figure out what that factor is based off your specific setup. There's no mathematical formula that says X amount of Bowden tube length and this temperature equates to that. So the tests basically go through a guess and check where you say this line looks the best. And at the end, what you should have is you should almost reduce your retraction to 0 because the hot end is going to push out a bunch of filament up front, push it along the line, and then at the end of the line, it's going to pull it a little bit back and dribble out until there's nothing left on the nozzle to dribble out during your move. And then, of course, this repeats. So when you do your move, it goes from point A to point B, and then goes and pumps a bunch of filament right back into that nozzle to prime it at the beginning of the next line. So a K factor of too high, you're going to see blobbing at the beginning of your line and tapering off at the end. And then with a too low of a K factor, you're going to see the same thing, only vice versa. You're going to see the line thin out at the beginning and then suddenly thicken up at the corners. And you notice that usually with little blobbings at your corner. So follow the tests that are out there, use the generator and try it. Bowden setups, 100% recommend to give it a go, but direct drive, I can't find a factor low enough that wouldn't cause a drag off at the end.
All right, we got
Super Chat.
Hey, from Joseph Jolly,
Jolly.
$14.99. Thank you very much, Joseph, and thank you for the comment. He says, great show. You both have helped me a lot. Thank you, and we do appreciate it. And that's why we do this show, now that we're at the bottom of the hour. We do this to help you guys. I mean, everything that we've learned, we want to pass on. Now, that doesn't say that we are available 24/7 to help you with your problems, because we both have lives and things like that. But if you do have questions, let me just pull this up.
Ding.
Ding, yep. If you want your questions answered, you can drop us an email at questions@thefirstlayer.com. That is the only place to send me or Brian your questions. If they don't appear there, they don't get answered. And as most of you that are on our Facebook page know, today I have come to the point where I can't answer everybody's questions that message me on Facebook Messenger. And on some days I get 20 messages from various people. And it becomes a lot. I spend my day on Messenger and not doing what I need to be doing to bring you guys the show and a lot more content. So, Super Chat is turned on, as everybody knows. Everybody knows. Then now we're going to get demonetized.
And you know, when you guys go and when you have questions, we always say post it to the Facebook group because we're just two people and we've got a group. I think of 1,400 people or something crazy.
2,200.
Okay, I'm way behind here.
2.2K is what we got over there.
Yeah, so you're going to have 1,198 more people available to look at your question. And, you know, we are advanced users and expert users, but we're not masters. We can't tell you everything that's wrong. And we don't have every printer on the market, obviously. So you might find someone who actually has your same configuration and may be able to give you that little hint. And that's what this whole community is all about. It's a community of helping.
Robert Marvin says, guys, how about hitting the thumbs up and the like? I agree with that, because that helps us. That helps our metrics, and it helps us at the end of the day, and it helps us with the rewatch value of these live streams as well. Mark Thibodeau, who is in our room tonight, sent me a question on September 7th, and he says, hello to Richard and Brian. About 2 months ago, I purchased the Big Tree SKR Mini E3 version 1.2 with the 2209 stepper drivers. Had no problem installing the board and firmware version. Bug fix 2.0X. I love it. Very silent, except the fans, LOL. Fast forward to 2 days ago, I watched Shep's video on mesh bed leveling with the same board that I have, and his version came with a bed mesh leveling already enabled. So I went to the Big Tree GitHub and found the firmware and downloaded it. There was a firmware.bin file all ready to go, and it was the latest version 2.0.6. So I installed the firmware and went well until I went to home the printer, and the motors are noisy. Hoping you guys can help. Mark, I can tell you exactly what's gone on there. The firmware is not registering the actual drivers that are on the board. So I believe that firmware in the .bin thinks that it's got 4428 or 4928s.
I'm not sure with their latest version. I can definitely tell you the 1.2 board, it doesn't have an EEPROM either.
No.
So you may actually have settings being restored from your previous firmware and it's getting all corrupted. So make sure, and this is just a kind of a thing for everybody, make sure whenever you flash a new firmware that you go ahead and re-init the EEPROM, restore your fail-safe settings, and save them, because it doesn't always erase your old settings. And Trinamics, there's a whole bunch of flags. It sounds like you're actually stuck in it's not stealth chop mode. What's the other one there? Spread cycle?
Spread cycle,
You're stuck
yeah.
in spread cycle mode. The other thing too, does it say anything on your screen like TMC connection error? Because if it cannot talk to the stepper, the stepping rate's something like 2 times how far it should go, so it really fires home quickly. But there's also settings in the firmware to turn off the silent step stick option. It does sound like your firmware bin is not great, but at the same time, the best check is to make sure to flush out your settings when you do a new firmware download, especially on the Big Tree Tech boards.
Joey Borg, is setting your E-steps hard? It seems confusing. Actually, it's not that hard at all. With a little bit of math, you do have to do math. That's the hard part. You can dial in your E-steps. And I'm going to say this again. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. Go to Michael's Teaching Tech YouTube page. He's got a whole couple of videos on calibrating your printer, and he's created a GitHub page where you can just put in some numbers and it will spit out exactly what you need. And I got to tell you, I've used it. I used it on the new Ender 3 V2, and it improved my prints dramatically from the stock settings. So go and check out Michael at Teaching Tech right here on YouTube. And I don't mind promoting other people's channels, especially when they've got great stuff. We promote Shep all the time. We promote Michael. We promote our good friend who is not here tonight, however, Jerry over at 3D Printing and Painting. So yeah, we're not the smartest guys on the planet, and there's other guys out there that are a lot smarter than us.
We're always learning, and if you guys don't believe that, you can definitely see me live monitoring my print right now on the printer to make sure I haven't screwed up my settings. So rest assured, we're always learning.
Exactly.
Brad Pond was asking, do you guys think there will be much of a learning curve / never before seen issues with the CR-30? Absolutely. I've been actively watching it because I've been curious about the technology. And basically, although the printer itself won't require a lot of calibration, the biggest change is in the slicer, because currently there's just a mod for Cura Basic. I think it's black something or other. I can't recall, but basically the slicer now has to reorient itself, and I was always unsure of how the hot end was oriented, but it looks like the whole hot end sits at a 45 angle too. So even though the slicer is going to probably be dialed in pretty soon and get all that together, now you've got on the printer side, you've actually got a whole different set of gravitational rules applying to your nozzle. So, for instance, a lot of one question I get a lot of regarding nozzles, brass nozzles versus stainless steel versus hardened steel, all these different ones. There are actually some hot ends out there that repel plastic a bit better. And if you put a brass nozzle on this machine and now it's tilted at a 45 angle, there's a much higher chance of that filament curling onto the nozzle itself and getting stuck there. So everything I've seen so far, the prints are looking fantastic. But that being said, yes, there's going to be a lot of changes. There's going to be new sets of vibration parameters. There's going to be new sets of different sort of like fish scale effects and all that. It is going to change quite a bit how you have to look at modeling your model and building supports and all that. Now, the other thing too is at a 45-degree angle, even with a large frame, your Z build height, or well, right now it would be considered a Z build height, I'm not sure what they're going to call it, is going to be reduced dramatically as well. You'll actually need quite a bigger surface area in order to handle taller prints. So you're going to have to orient everything on its side, and then again, this is just going to impact how you deal with your supports. I'd love to play with one. I'd love to see what they look like, but do I think it's going to be great for the market? I don't know. It seems like quite a professional thing designed for either giant prints or massive rapid prototyping cycles. I don't think it's going to really be for the average consumer.
I kind of agree with you on that, and I think, and we've seen these over the last couple of years too, at different maker fairs and 3D printing fairs and things like that. I think that this is a technology that, again, is not going, like Brian said, it's not going to impact you and me, the hobbyist, but it may impact those guys that are, kicking out keychains and kicking out promotional material and things like that. I think it's going to impact them. Again, if we get one here in the studio, we will definitely show it to you guys, and we will make sure that you guys get a look at it and a full review from both of us. At the end of the day, though, getting printers from Creality sometimes is like pulling teeth, but we do have some really cool printers coming up for review in the next little while as well. We've got 3 of them on the bench upstairs right now. They're all running prints, and that's all they're doing. And one is a dual head, so 2 heads, 2 extruders, 2 rolls of filament. That's the size of a CR-10 on a linear rail and a touch screen. So,
and behind me, conveniently off camera, is another secret project I'm working on, and I really hope it succeeds so I can show you guys that.
So we're going to try and keep you guys up to date with the latest technologies that we can. And that's what our weekly show is about, is teaching and also to show you guys new products that are out there and what we recommend and what we don't recommend. There are printers out there I don't recommend, and there are some printers we have gotten here in the studio, and I've said this before, that just don't work. And there's no point in me wasting time doing a video on something that just doesn't work. And I've been doing this now coming up on 4 years as far as my 3D printing adventures going, but we're coming up on our 3rd anniversary of the show very soon as well. So at the end of the day, there are some printers we haven't showed you just because they don't work and it's a waste of my time to film them. So we let the companies know what our gripes and concerns are before I offer it to you guys, because I really want to show you stuff that's going to work. If it's not going to work, it's a waste of your time and a waste of my time.
So, for instance, a good example, today I just had received my kit of the Ender 3 complete retrofit kit to make it all linear rails, every single axis. I got it because it was a super cheap deal, but will we see a review on it? That remains to be seen, if it's actually going to do anything for the printer. I do a lot of experiments on the side just to see, because I like to play around with my machines, but there's no point in posting a video if it's absolutely going to be a mess for your printer, because a lot of people are going to see the thumbnail and go and buy it without watching it to the end. So we like to pick and choose what we review, and I've got a couple products coming in that I've personally paid for, so no sponsored reviews on them, and I'll let you know if they're really, really good or if they're such a travesty that it warrants a video. But so far, basically everything I've ordered and played with, the results are either mediocre or not noticeable at all. So I've done mods for the sake of modding it. And that kind of leads into Dominic Versetto's question here of I've had my Ender 5 Pro for almost 3 months. I haven't upgraded or anything. I can print almost anything I want. Is there any reason to add a BL Touch or upgrade to a 32-bit board?
No.
No, it works. Leave it.
And this is what I always say to people when they buy a new printer for the first time. Don't mess with it. Set it up, print with it, get to know it. The reason I say that is because you're not going to go out and buy a car tomorrow off the lot and then take it to your mechanic and say, put in a brand new engine. You're not going to do that. And it's the same thing with anything else you buy. You don't buy an LCD TV and say, okay, replace all the electronics in it after you bought it. Same thing with your 3D printer. Get to know it. If it's working for you and you've got it tuned, leave it alone. Don't mess with it. When something finally breaks on it, and inevitably, because it is an electronic device working all the time, something's going to give out. And when that happens, then it's time to look at those upgrades. What else? There was one other one I saw here.
And Sausage, to answer your question, that particular printer is sitting under my kitchen table right now.
There you go.
Does that answer your question?
Pete Sandy says, I had a bed issue recently, got disgusted with the bed wheels and ordered a linear rails kit from 3D Fused. Ha ha ha.
I haven't tried. I'm just going to look at their kit because I'm sorry. Did you say which printer it was?
No.
No. Okay. I'm just going to. I mean, they do have some great kits. Truth be told, Canada sucks. We don't get any of these cool companies making any of this stuff up here. And as a result, the shipping cost to bring it into our country, in addition to the dollar difference, because their CR-10S kit, for instance, can go up to 189 US. That's almost 300 Canadian dollars. It is pricey, but for us to bring it in just to do a test. So in regards to the bed, for instance, yeah, absolutely. Mine, actually, I custom designed a linear rail kit with MGN 12H rails, and I've partnered up with a local person in town here who has a CNC to custom cut me anything in aluminum I want. So all my bed mounts are aluminum. It's actually aluminum all the way through, and it's absolutely rigid. Now, again, does this mean you should go and replace your bed with linear rails? That's up to you, because that's quite a big investment, and we've mocked people in the past for buying duet boards for Enders, but this is almost at the same level. What kind of problem are you trying to solve? Now, for the 10S5, it's got a huge bed. I do believe that linear rails will make it a better experience, and we'll talk more about that in upcoming episodes. But for anything smaller than, I would say, the CR-10S4, I don't see a reason to do it. I've got my 10S behind me here with linear rails, and sure, it works spectacular, but I also dropped $80-90 into the darn thing. So, gauge
Plus
it for
the
yourself.
time.
Absolutely. And yeah, the time and the tuning, and you have to make sure your rails are straight. And I was talking with a few people today about this. Even if it's from a very reputable location, you need to prime your linear rails. You need to purge out the shipping lubricant using isopropyl alcohol. You need to make sure not to take the carriage off the rails, or you're going to lose bearings. You need to purge all that out, and then you need to re-lubricate it with something extremely low viscosity, such as I use sewing machine oil. You have to run it back and forth several times, make sure it's in there, and then keep an eye on it and make sure you don't have browning on your rails from wear of different materials. Now, if you're willing to put in that effort, it's going to be the smoothest thing you'll ever operate. But if you don't bother to put the work up front, you're basically going to destroy those rails within a year.
So Dan Adams is asking, what do you guys think of the new Big Tree Tech Box Kickstarter? I cannot comment on that because we have other irons in the fire with Big Tree right now. So I can't make any comments on Big Tree products that they're rolling out at the immediate time. So I'm just going to say I can't say.
I'm on like 5 other groups, and I can safely say I haven't seen any of their Kickstarters. The only one I backed recently was the Sunlu Fila Dryer, and as friends such as Jerry Knapp at 3D Printing and Painting have already received theirs and done a review. Canada is delayed by about a month, so I'm debating if I'm still going to do a review on it because there will be enough of them out there. But if there is a cool Kickstarter you want to share with us, again, post it to our Facebook group. We do like to see new technologies coming out and see what you guys are interested in, because we tinker, in the downtime, especially when they're not dropping new printers between October and March. We do like to tinker with all the different little modifications. So let us know what they're posting out there.
Now, there's probably going to be a couple of new products being dropped between now and the end of the year, because Christmas is coming up, and that's when companies like to start getting in on the Christmas market, because that's when they make a lot of money. So when those products are rolled out, and we've got a couple of great little ideas for you for Christmas as well, that we're going to be talking about in terms of printers. I want to address, there's a question here from Sean Steed. He says, I need help. Where do I go? From here, my CR-10S is not working. I've done all I can, printed fine till it stopped printing. Sean, I know that you've been sending me messages and emails. You really have to work out what it is or is not doing. Send it to questions@thefirstlayer.com. If it's something that we can immediately help you with, we will. Okay?
And as we've said last, one of the greatest diagnostic things you can do for us right now is follow Michael at Teaching Tech's website and perform his baseline G-code print of a cube, because that mechanism, it goes and generates the exact same G-code person to person, just modified for the printer, for the bed size and the temperatures. And based off that, we'll actually have a fixed metric we can look at between each printer, even if it's the same model. So I print that almost daily, just when I'm calibrating my machines, and even machine to machine, I will get it so close on that baseline, and then I'll go to Cura and it'll print like garbage. I can safely say there's something wrong with my Cura. So I'd like, please print your baseline from his website and post that photo on the Facebook group. And then, as I said earlier, you'll have over 2,200 people available to give their insight and hopefully get you in the right direction there.
Okay, so let's go to Pete Sandy. First, I got to say this. Who said this? I got to give you a raise, apparently, because you're doing all the talking tonight.
Any raise from $0 would be appreciated. I don't make any revenue off this show currently, guys.
After adjusting the wheels, I kept getting binding, so the bed was moving back and forth. So I'll keep you guys posted. Pete, let me tell you something. I'm going to do a full breakdown video like I did with why you should upgrade your slicer. I'm going to do a full video on those exact wheels and how to tighten them correctly, because that is the one thing that people get wrong all the time, is those darn little wheels and the eccentric spacers that are on them. People don't know how to adjust them properly, and I'm going to do a complete video on how to adjust the eccentric spacers correctly. Okay?
Because once you understand what they are and what they do, everything will just come together. It's like getting a wheel alignment. Trust me.
Yeah, it sure is.
I had a part to print using Cura 4.7 CR-10S. The part has a slot through the middle, 1-inch cube. It looks good when placed, but doing preview after slicing, the slot is gone. What am I doing wrong? Well, you've got I believe it's technically a non-manifold edge, but basically it's a problem with your model. So although the preview looks great, it sounds like there's an extra polygon data in there that's actually filling it in. So if you're running Windows, go ahead and open that STL file in Windows 3D, I think it's 3D Builder. It'll say there's errors in the model, click OK, and then save the file again, and that may correct it. There are some tools in Cura to correct that too, but I've had mixed results with that. But simply put, the issue is with your model file.
So Craig Robertson says, I have an Ender 5 Pro with a magnetic plastic bed. I got some PET G that I've wanted to print with, but I'm hesitating because I've heard that it will bond to surfaces like PEI when printed. Would using a layer of glue stick on the bed be enough to keep the PETG from bonding with the bed, or should I use something like masking tape? You could use masking tape. I would probably put masking tape on there before I put glue stick onto those magnetic surfaces, just because masking tape is easier to take off and it doesn't leave behind any residue. If you've got to get that glue stick off those surfaces, it does take a little bit more scrubbing, and you could damage your surface by scrubbing it out with the green scrubby cloth. So just put some masking tape on it. It won't leave any glue residue behind, and you should be just fine. Hey, we got Patrick.
Super chat.
Thank you very
Patrick.
much, Patrick Reedy. We do appreciate that. Everything helps. Everything in the coffers helps us to keep doing this every Saturday night and every Wednesday.
We do love coffee, and as much as I'm drinking water tonight, I probably had about 3 or 4 cups of coffee today, so that definitely helps towards the coffee bill.
I Talk It says, hi, what do you guys think of the CR-10 Max? I picked one up for $400, and so far it's performing well. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Yeah, that's a great deal for a CR-10 Max. The one thing I'm not impressed with on the Max is the dual extruder single nozzle. That's not one of my favorite things because those clog up pretty easily if you don't have the right amount of retraction. So that's just some advice to keep in mind. Other
Does the
than
CR-10
that,
Max have a mixing nozzle? I didn't even know that.
it's a mixing nozzle. Yeah, it's a mixing nozzle.
Yeah. I mean, mixing nozzles, we've kind of, I think we covered it mostly in our CRX video, but any kind of mixing nozzle requires a major amount of purging. Now, the photos I'm looking at online show it's only a single nozzle, in which case, yeah, that's, I think, the problem with Creality's got a
the X
great
is the dual. Yes,
standard.
I'm sorry.
The X is the dual, yeah. So,
sorry.
honestly, the Max looked great. Basically, the Max is supposed to be the CR-10S V2 replacement.
Yeah.
And everything I've looked at with the Max, I agree with. The only thing I disagree with is that their continued use of the physical rubber wheels underneath that. It is just problematic. But with the braces and everything, it's a good machine. To give you an idea, in Canada, it goes for $13.49 Canadian, so it's not a cheap machine. It's in the same lines of a Prusa, and it's why we don't generally buy them. The only reason I have a 10S5 is because I got a used one from the US for, I think I paid $300 Canadian or something disgustingly cheap for it.
Super chat.
Hey, we got a super chat from Spartan Props. Go over and give her a big kiss for me.
Well, I'm sure I'm going to end up having to pay for it, so I just, I just gave YouTube a little bonus.
There you go. There you go.
Thanks, YouTube, for streaming me.
Open Builds has a great video on adjusting eccentric spacers, James Lane says. Yes, they do, but it's not particular to our 3D printer setups. So what I'm planning on, and it's going to be a fairly long video, is we're going to talk about all of them. And we're going to use an Ender 3 Pro to do it because I've got one that needs some love and attention, and we're going to use that one in the video. So
James Lane was saying PetG prints fine on the C-Mag bed, and I've heard that's the case. Now
it does.
I don't think the Creality bed actually has a PEI coating on it, though, does it?
No, it is like basically what it is it's the same. What is that stuff called? The black stuff.
Build tack or whatever.
Build tack. It's build tack on a magnet is exactly what it is.
So it's a different composition. The stuff that we're talking about with bed adhesion with PetG is specific PEI sheets that both come in a plastic form and a steel sheet. You kind of can't see it behind me, but every single sheet of mine is spring steel sheets, and I have read about that PEI factor because PEI does have a similar softening point to the PetG. When you're running your bed that hot, I mean, apart from having your magnets go do weird things, it will stick a little bit harder to that bed. So you got to make basically the safest thing you can do, of course, is putting something on the surface like glue to kind of inhibit that, and then make sure your first layer is dialed in so you're not pressing it too close to the bed. Similar to a piece of glass, you do the same thing, you're going to shatter a piece of glass. So you got to get that perfect height where it's not glooping and bouncing above the bed, and it's not smearing it across the bed rubbing away your glue and pressing it, hot filament into a plastic that can be melted.
Now, this is a spring steel sheet from our good friends over at BQ. They sent me over a couple of them, and I've been testing them. And I got to tell you, although this is PEI on both sides, it's powder-coated PEI on spring steel. And you probably heard that. This thing works great. However, if you don't have a magnet on your bed, it can be a little troublesome because you've got to put bull clips then on it to hold it in place. I've got a printer that I'm testing upstairs right now, and I'm going to actually put this on and try it on that printer, and we'll see how well that thing goes. LB Sharp, how do you do Super Chat? Well, there's a little dollar sign down at the very bottom. You just click it and type in whatever amount you want to give us. And
now,
that's it.
Why? If you have the chat in a pop-out, YouTube doesn't embed the dollar sign, so you have to make sure it's actually in the main page. And
that's right.
I'll complain to them about that, and it'll go to that email inbox that goes right into the flames,
Joe Jolly says, I use Wham Bam on my CR-10S Pro. Works great. I reached out to Wham Bam, and because I wanted to try their ones for the, my resin printers, because I really don't need them for the other printers. I kind of know how that works, but I'd like to see how well they work on my resin printers. And at the end of the day, I haven't heard anything back. So maybe they're not going to send me one because they don't sell them in Canada from anybody. So
yeah, I actually, through a couple of friends, we did buy a few of the Wham Bam flex plates for resin. I haven't picked mine up yet. I got a couple extra ones, but Wham Bam is just another brand. I mean, the sheets that I use religiously are the energetic flex steels, and I'll make sure to give you guys info once I'm done my review on them. But some of these sheets, let's put it this way, the more money you spend, the better quality it's going to be. For my 10S5, the sheet cost over $100 Canadian. It was not cheap, but it came with the magnet, and it is absolutely stellar. But the cheaper ones, various ones that'll either not come with the magnetic sheet, as Richard said, or they're just a very cheap PEI. And the other thing, too, is with PEI sheets, you have to make sure to take care of them correctly. And there's a reason they say do not use acetone on the surface, because acetone will melt PEI quicker than any PET-G you put on that bed.
Yep, absolutely. Keep acetone away from your printer, period.
Please.
I know a lot of people like to use acetone slurry. I've used it. I don't think it works any better than glue stick or a good surface to mount or to print onto. In all of my experience in printing different materials from nylons all the way to PETG and PLA, I got to tell you that this type of surface has a little bit of texture, whether that be masking tape, a bed like this, or the beds that you'll find on the Anycubics or the new surfaces that are coming on the Enders. Those work great as long as you've calibrated your 3D printer and you've got it adjusted properly, the head to the bed. It's not bed leveling, it's actually called bed tramming. And it's something that we got into it was a misnomer where we were leveling the bed and people were putting actual levels on the bed to level the bed. That's the wrong way to do it. You want to tram the actual tool head to the bed so that it rides around correctly on the surface in which it has to build. So that being said, we have showed in the past how to do that. We are going to make a new video using a dial caliper and show you exactly how to tram the bed with a dial caliper.
And with that, just talking one more thing about acetone to understand. Number one, acetone's not great to work with. It's essentially like a paint thinner. And the reason why the slurries do work is because you're chemically melting already hot filament onto the surface to give it more of a binding. Now, that's not great either, because unless you basically got it to bind, remove it quickly from the machine and rinse it off while it's still printing, you're basically leaving a chemical there to etch away at your plastic, and it's actually going to damage your integrity if you put it on too strong. Now, I use acetone for things like paint thinner when doing airbrushing, but when it comes to a printer, acetone is it's kind of the equivalent of using sulfuric acid to clean your countertop. It's way overkill. So the important thing to realize is that there are two ways to clean a printer bed. There is the cleaning of contaminants, and there's the cleaning of greases. Yep. And what I've been finding lately, because really there's not much of a reason in making a big video about this, is that the best thing you can use is soap, preferably something like Dawn that's a degreaser. Scrub it into your bed with paper towel, get it all wet in there, rinse it off if you can, and then afterwards use isopropyl alcohol to remove any surface contaminants left, both from your print and from your soap itself. If you have a very slimy soap, like a hand soap, it's going to leave all this stuff on the surface. But if you use a good degreaser, similar to what you would use on your dishes, you basically will be able to eat off your print bed at the end. But that will solve a lot of bed adhesion issues. That will solve a lot of cleanliness issues. And the key is you have to put in the manual effort and scrub your bed. Don't just rinse it. You have to actually scrub it. And we'll go over mediums for scrubbing the beds. But Richard, especially with your PEI sheet there, that's what I would recommend. And you can see already, look at those fingerprints.
Yep. Now, this surface, I've made this mistake in the past. I'd take an alcohol wipe and wipe it down and start my next print. Don't do that. You want to use a degreaser like Dawn dish soap. You can pull this off your printer now that they've made it so that it'll come off. You take it off, take it over the sink, give it a good cleaning, then let it dry naturally. Do not put alcohol on here, because what you're doing, this textured surface actually has a bite to it. So what it'll do is it'll grab the bottom of the plastic and it'll hold it in because it's textured. Once you start putting alcohol on here, you'll notice when you pull up the rag that you've got the alcohol on, that the rag is now yellow. What you're doing is you're taking off a very small bit of film that is on here that allows your part to stick. So if you're using a surface like this, please do not use alcohol on it. Take it to the sink, clean it up with a degreaser, and then put it back on your printer. And the nice thing about these is they have glass, just straight glass on the other side. So if you want to print something like PETG, you're not going to print it on this side. You're going to flip it over, print it on this side, and use a little bit of glue stick.
Mm-hmm. Just one comment here before we wrap things up, because we're really rocking it tonight. Mike Kirk Jr. was saying, I've been using those individual eyeglass cleaning wipes for team prints. Oops. You shouldn't be using those, and I'll tell you why. Because those, although they smell like alcohol, they're not 100% alcohol. There is a lubricant in there that is designed to polish a little bit more of the surface for your glasses to make them clearer. And what makes glasses clearer? A smooth surface. So now what you're doing is you're smearing essentially a lubricant almost on top of your bed, and you may actually have a worse time. So here's what to do if you're ever trying something like this. I don't have any pieces of glass here, for example, but say, for instance, your cell phone. Your cell phone screen is designed to be really smooth, but when it's clean, it's shiny and all that, but you can still feel a bit of resistance on the surface. Now, if you're cleaning it and it's still greasy, you're going to find your finger runs right across that. And think of your finger as a piece of filament. Is it going to stick, or is it going to carry on with its own material? So give it a good cleaning, rub your fingers across the surface, and if you're doing the right thing, you're going to feel that resistance. Now, hindsight, you're also going to have to clean it once more, but you'll know you're doing the right process. And the slogan of the show, right? The first layer is your foundation to a great print. This is the key, is making sure your surface is clean, making sure your Z height's set correctly, and that your bed is level. And that's my rant for the week.
Well, this has been the Brian Show tonight.
I had over 2 weeks of pent-up conversation, okay? This is what you guys do.
There you go. We want to thank you all for joining us tonight. And yes, so he says, I guess I adjust them for my glasses. Just use them for your glasses. Don't use them for your 3D printer.
Use it for your mirrors or your windows. Don't use it for your 3D printer, please.
Yeah, exactly. That being said, guys, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We went overtime a little bit. We started a little early and we went a little late. So hope you guys got something out of tonight. After the stream has stopped, leave us a comment down below. And in the comment section, let us know what you thought about tonight. And we are going to see you guys here again on Wednesday with a brand new episode. Something to get you guys moving forward and give you a little bit of ideas of what you might want to do next. We are pretty much done with the 3D printing stuff. If you want us to do another useful 3D prints video, let us know. And I think the only thing we got coming up for 3D prints is Halloween and then Christmas. So, and then we're going to do our Christmas rundown again this year, being that everybody's been stuck inside all year. So with that said, my friends, Brian, thank you very much for being with me.
Thanks again, Richard. Always a pleasure to see you virtually.
We live in two different towns now, so
yeah, it's almost a 50-minute drive just to go visit, so it's kind of tough.
That being said, I always want to remind you guys that the first layer is always your foundation to a great print, and we're going to see you guys next time.
Take care. Bye for now.